In a small, sleepy town nestled in the heart of the southern United States, life moved at a leisurely pace. The streets were lined with modest houses, and everyone seemed to know each other's names. It was the kind of place where neighbors exchanged warm smiles and shared stories over cups of coffee. But beneath the surface of this seemingly idyllic community lay shadows of prejudice and division that had lingered for generations. Marcus Johnson, a hard-working black man in his early 30s, had recently moved into a charming little house on Maple Street. For Marcus, buying this home wasn't just about having a roof over his head, it was a dream come true. He had worked tirelessly for years, saving every penny, taking extra shifts, and sacrificing comforts to finally afford a place he could call his own. The house may not have been grand or luxurious, but to Marcus it represented hope, stability, and the promise of a brighter future. From the moment Marcus arrived, however, there were whispers among some of the townsfolk. While many welcomed him warmly, others weren't so accepting. A group of young men, part of a local gang notorious for their racist views, saw Marcus as an outsider who didn't belong. To them, his presence disrupted the status quo, challenging their deeply ingrained beliefs about who should live in their neighborhood. One evening, as Marcus returned home after a long day at work, he noticed something hanging from the large oak tree in front of his house. At first glance, it looked like an ordinary piece of rope swaying gently in the breeze. But as he stepped closer, his stomach sank. Tied neatly into a loop, dangling ominously from a branch, was a noose, a symbol of hate and terror rooted in history. Marcus froze, his mind racing. He knew exactly what this meant. This wasn't just a prank or mischief. It was a deliberate act of intimidation designed to send a chilling message. You don't belong here. His heart pounded in his chest, and anger bubbled inside him. Yet, despite the fear creeping up his spine, Marcus refused to let himself be broken. He reminded himself of all the struggles he had faced to get here, the sacrifices, the sleepless nights, the relentless determination. He wasn't going to let anyone take that away from him. Standing under the tree, Marcus clenched his fists and took a deep breath. He glanced around, searching for any sign of the perpetrators, but the street was eerily quiet. In the distance, he spotted a group of shadowy figures watching from the corner of the block. They laughed and jeered, clearly pleased with themselves. Their voices carried through the stillness of the night, taunting him. "Go back where you came from," one of them shouted. Another added, "This is our town." For a moment, Marcus felt overwhelmed. He thought about calling the police, but past experiences had taught him that law enforcement in this town often turned a blind eye to such incidents. Besides, he didn't want to appear weak or afraid. Deep down, he knew that running away wouldn't solve anything. If anything, it would only embolden these cowards further. No, Marcus decided. He wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing him crumble. Instead, he would find a way to fight back. That night, Marcus sat alone in his living room, staring at the noose he had carefully removed from the tree. He held it in his hands, feeling its coarse texture, and thought about the weight of its symbolism. It represented centuries of oppression, violence, and injustice, but Marcus also realized that it could mean something else entirely. It could become a catalyst for change. As he reflected on his next move, memories of his late grandfather flooded his mind. His grandfather had always told him, "Never let hate win. Show them your strength, not your anger." Those words resonated deeply with Marcus now. Inspired by his grandfather's wisdom, Marcus began formulating a plan. He knew he couldn't confront the gang directly. They outnumbered him, and violence wasn't the answer. Instead, he needed to outsmart them, to turn their hateful gesture into a powerful statement of resilience. Early the next morning, Marcus headed to the local hardware store and purchased materials to build a large wooden sign. Back at home, he painted bold letters across the board, using bright colors to ensure it would catch everyone's attention. The message read, "This is my home. Your hate won't scare me away." With determination, Marcus planted the sign right beneath the tree where the noose had hung. He stood back and admired his work, feeling a sense of pride wash over him. This wasn't just a declaration of defiance. It was a testament to his unwavering spirit. Word of Marcus's response spread quickly throughout the neighborhood. Some people applauded his courage, while others remained silent, unsure of how to react. But one thing was certain: Marcus had made it clear that he wasn't going anywhere. The gang, meanwhile, grew increasingly frustrated. They had expected Marcus to pack up and leave, cowering in the face of their intimidation. Instead, he had stood his ground, refusing to be silenced. Their laughter turned to scowls, and their confidence wavered. Little did they know Marcus's actions were only the beginning of a much larger battle, one that would force them to confront the consequences of their hatred. As days passed, Marcus continued to fortify his defenses. He installed security cameras around his property, ensuring that every move of the gang would be captured on film. He documented everything meticulously, knowing that evidence would be crucial if he ever needed to prove their wrongdoing. Neighbors began noticing the changes in Marcus's demeanor. Gone was the quiet, reserved man who had first moved onto Maple Street. In his place stood someone stronger, more resolute, a man determined to protect not only his home, but also his dignity. Though tension simmered beneath the surface, Marcus remained steadfast. He went about his daily routine with purpose, refusing to let fear dictate his life. Each morning, he watered the flowers he had planted near the tree, nurturing new life in a space once tainted by hate. Each evening, he greeted passers-by with a smile, extending kindness even to those who avoided making eye contact. Slowly but surely, Marcus was transforming his house, and perhaps the entire neighborhood, into a place defined not by fear, but by hope. Unbeknownst to the gang, their attempt to drive Marcus away had backfired spectacularly. What started as an act of cruelty had ignited a spark within him, fueling a resolve that burned brighter than any flame of hatred. And as Marcus stood beneath the tree one evening, gazing at the sign he had created, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. The noose may have been intended to break him, but instead it had strengthened his resolve. The real fight, he knew, was just beginning. The gang, seething with frustration, couldn't believe Marcus had not only stayed but also responded with such boldness. To them, his defiance was an insult, a direct challenge to their authority. They had expected him to crumble under the weight of their intimidation, to pack his bags and disappear quietly. Instead, Marcus stood tall, unshaken by their threats. This infuriated them, and they vowed to escalate their harassment. Late one night, as the town slept in silence, the gang gathered near Marcus's house. Armed with rocks, bottles, and slurs, they approached his property with malicious intent. Their laughter echoed through the empty streets as they hurled insults and began smashing windows. The sound of shattering glass pierced the calm of the night, and for a moment it seemed like their plan was working. But inside the house, Marcus remained calm. He had anticipated this kind of retaliation and was ready for it. Marcus had installed motion-activated floodlights around his yard earlier that week. As the gang advanced, the lights suddenly blazed on, illuminating the entire area. Startled, the gang froze, momentarily blinded by the sudden brightness. From inside the house, Marcus emerged, holding a flashlight in one hand and a whistle in the other. His presence caught them off guard. Most people would have been terrified in such a situation, but Marcus exuded confidence. "You think you can scare me?" Marcus shouted, his voice steady and commanding. "You're nothing but cowards hiding behind hate. If you've got something to say it to my face." The gang hesitated, unsure how to react. They weren't used to someone standing up to them so boldly. One of them, emboldened by anger, stepped forward, raising a fist as if to strike. But before he could make a move, Marcus pressed a button on his phone. A deafening siren erupted from hidden speakers scattered around the property, its piercing wail echoing through the neighborhood. The unexpected noise sent the gang scrambling. Panicked, they dropped their weapons and fled into the darkness, tripping over each other in their haste to escape. Neighbors, startled awake by the commotion, peered out of their windows to see what was happening. Some even ventured outside, drawn by the chaos. What they saw was Marcus standing confidently in his yard, watching as the gang disappeared into the shadows. No one could deny the courage it took to face such hostility head-on. The next morning, word of the incident spread quickly through the town. People whispered about Marcus's bravery, marveling at how he had single-handedly driven away the gang. Some admired his strength, while others criticized him for provoking trouble. But Marcus paid no attention to the gossip. He knew that staying silent wouldn't solve anything. It never did. Instead, he decided to take matters further. That afternoon, he visited the local hardware store again, purchasing more materials to reinforce his defenses. He also bought a large padlock for his front gate and additional cameras to monitor every corner of his property. But Marcus didn't stop there. He realized that fighting back wasn't just about protecting himself, it was about exposing the truth. He spent hours reviewing the footage captured by his security cameras, carefully compiling evidence of the gang's actions. Every taunt, every rock thrown, every act of vandalism was recorded in vivid detail. With this evidence in hand, Marcus headed to the town hall to speak with officials. At first, his efforts were met with resistance. Some members of the local government dismissed his concerns, claiming there wasn't enough proof or suggesting that Marcus might be exaggerating the situation. Others feared backlash from the gang, whose influence extended far beyond petty crimes. They were connected to powerful families in the community. Frustrated but undeterred, Marcus refused to give up. He organized a meeting with concerned citizens, inviting neighbors and friends to join him in demanding justice. During the meeting, Marcus shared his story, showing the video footage and explaining the impact of the gang's actions on his life. He spoke passionately, his words resonating with those who had experienced similar forms of discrimination. Slowly but surely, support began to grow. A few neighbors admitted to witnessing the gang's behavior in the past, but had been too afraid to speak out. Now inspired by Marcus's bravery, they decided to come forward. Together, they formed a coalition dedicated to combating racism and ensuring accountability for hate crimes. As the coalition gained momentum, Marcus became a symbol of hope in the community. People admired his resilience and determination, and many rallied behind him. Local news outlets picked up the story, shining a spotlight on the gang's activities. Reporters interviewed Marcus, capturing his unwavering spirit on camera. When asked why he chose to fight instead of leaving, Marcus simply replied, "This is my home. I worked hard for it, and I'm not going to let anyone take it away from me." Public pressure mounted as more details emerged about the gang's history of violence and intimidation. Parents expressed outrage that such behavior was tolerated in their town, while teachers voiced concerns about the message it sent to young people. Even some former supporters of the gang began distancing themselves, fearing association with their toxic reputation. It was clear that the tide was turning against them. Authorities, facing increasing scrutiny, finally took action. Arrest warrants were issued for the gang members involved in the attacks on Marcus's property. Raids were conducted at their hideouts, uncovering weapons, stolen goods, and other incriminating evidence. Several members were arrested while others went into hiding, knowing their days of terrorizing the community were numbered. For Marcus, the arrests marked a significant victory, but he knew the battle wasn't over. Racism wasn't something that could be eradicated overnight. It was deeply ingrained in society and required sustained effort to address. Determined to create lasting change, Marcus turned his focus toward education and outreach. He began visiting schools, sharing his experiences with students, and encouraging open discussions about prejudice and acceptance. Teachers praised his approach, noting how effectively he connected with young people. Marcus also collaborated with local organizations to host workshops and events promoting diversity and inclusion. He transformed his yard into a vibrant space filled with colorful flowers and welcoming decorations, inviting neighbors to gather and celebrate unity. What started as a personal project soon became a community initiative, bringing people together across racial and cultural lines. Over time, the atmosphere in the town began to shift. Conversations about race and equality became more common, and people grew increasingly vocal about rejecting hatred. Marcus's sign, "This is my home. Your hate won't scare me away," remained proudly displayed beneath the oak tree, serving as a constant reminder of the power of resilience. Though challenges still existed, Marcus proved that one person's courage could inspire countless others. His journey wasn't easy, but it demonstrated that standing up against injustice, no matter how daunting, was always worth it. The rope that once represented fear had been transformed into a symbol of triumph, and though the scars of racism lingered, Marcus's actions ignited a spark of hope, a beacon of light guiding the way toward a brighter, more inclusive future. The arrests of the gang members sent shockwaves through the town. For years, they had operated with near impunity, their actions dismissed as harmless mischief or teenage rebellion. But Marcus's relentless pursuit of justice exposed the truth. They were not just troublemakers. They were predators who thrived on fear and division. Their downfall became a turning point for the community, forcing people to confront uncomfortable truths about racism and prejudice that had long been swept under the rug. As the gang members appeared in court, the full extent of their crimes came to light. Evidence presented by Marcus, videos of their vandalism, audio recordings of their threats, and testimonies from witnesses left no room for denial. The judge condemned their behavior, emphasizing that hate-fueled actions would not be tolerated in the town. Some gang members received jail sentences, while others were placed on probation and ordered to attend rehabilitation programs focused on addressing bias and promoting empathy. It was a small step toward accountability, but for Marcus, it felt like a monumental victory. Despite the legal victories, Marcus knew that true change wouldn't come from punishing individuals alone. Racism wasn't confined to a single group of people. It was a systemic issue that required collective effort to dismantle. Determined to foster understanding and unity, Marcus doubled down on his mission to educate and inspire those around him. He began hosting regular meetings at the local library, inviting experts, activists, and ordinary citizens to discuss topics ranging from implicit bias to allyship. These gatherings attracted diverse crowds, creating spaces where people could share their stories and learn from one another. One evening, during one of these meetings, an elderly white woman named Mrs. Thompson stood up to speak. Her voice trembled as she recounted how her grandson had once been part of the gang. "I didn't know what he was doing," she admitted, tears streaming down her face. "I thought it was just boys being boys, but now I see the harm they caused, not just to Mr. Johnson, but to all of us." Her confession struck a chord with many attendees, sparking conversations about the role families play in perpetuating or challenging prejudice. Marcus listened intently, nodding in acknowledgement. He understood that ignorance often fueled hatred, and education was key to breaking the cycle. After the meeting, he approached Mrs. Thompson and thanked her for speaking up. "It takes courage to admit when we're wrong," he told her, "and it takes even more courage to try and make things right." Moved by his kindness, Mrs. Thompson promised to support his efforts however she could. From that day forward, she became one of Marcus's most vocal advocates, urging others to join the fight against racism. Word of Marcus's initiative spread beyond the town, catching the attention of regional media outlets. Journalists traveled to Maple Street to interview him, eager to tell the story of a man who refused to back down in the face of hate. Cameras captured footage of Marcus tending to his garden, painting murals on his fence, and interacting warmly with neighbors. His humble demeanor and unwavering optimism resonated with viewers, inspiring countless others to take action in their own communities. One reporter asked Marcus what kept him going despite the challenges. Without hesitation, he replied, "I do this for my kids, for every child who deserves to grow up in a world where they feel safe and valued. If I can show them that love is stronger than hate, then maybe, just maybe, they'll carry that lesson into the future." His words struck a chord with parents and educators alike. Schools across the region invited Marcus to speak at assemblies, hoping to instill in students the same sense adder. Marcus's visits to schools became a cornerstone of his efforts to combat racism and inspire the next generation. Each time he stepped into a classroom or auditorium, students greeted him with curiosity and respect. They were eager to hear the story of the man who had faced hatred head-on and emerged victorious, not through violence but through courage and resilience. Marcus tailored his talks to resonate with young minds using simple language and relatable examples to convey complex ideas about prejudice, empathy, and standing up for what is right. During one particularly memorable visit to Maplewood Middle School, Marcus stood before a sea of curious faces, holding up the noose that had once hung from the tree in front of his house. The room fell silent as he explained its significance. "This rope was meant to scare me," he said, his voice steady. "It was supposed to make me feel like I didn't belong. But instead of letting it break me, I turned it into something else, a reminder that hate can never win if we refuse to let it." He then showed pictures of his home, the vibrant garden he had planted, the colorful mural on his fence, and the bold sign declaring, "This is my home." These images painted a picture of transformation, illustrating how an act of hate could be countered with love and creativity. Students listened intently, their eyes wide with admiration. When Marcus finished speaking, hands shot up across the room, eager to ask questions. One student, a shy girl named Emily, asked, "Weren't you scared? What if they hurt you?" Marcus smiled warmly before responding. "Of course I was scared," he admitted. "But fear doesn't have to control us. Sometimes being brave means doing the right thing even when you're afraid." Another boy, Jamal, raised his hand hesitantly. "What should we do if someone says mean things to us because of our skin color?" Marcus leaned forward, his expression thoughtful. "First, remember that their words don't define your worth. Second, find people you trust, friends, family, teachers, and tell them what happened. And finally, don't let their hate stop you from living your life fully." His answers struck a chord with the students, many of whom had experienced similar struggles. By the end of the session, several children approached Marcus to thank him personally. Some even hugged him, moved by his message of hope and perseverance. Teachers remarked later that they had never seen their students so engaged during a guest speaker's presentation. For many of these kids, Marcus wasn't just a role model. He was proof that change was possible. Back in the neighborhood, Marcus continued transforming his property into a symbol of unity and resilience. He worked tirelessly, often joined by volunteers from the community who wanted to contribute to his vision. Together they painted murals depicting diverse faces, planted flowers of every hue, and installed benches where neighbors could sit and chat. The once intimidating oak tree now served as the centerpiece of this outdoor sanctuary, adorned with ribbons bearing messages of peace and inclusion. On weekends, Marcus hosted gatherings in his yard, inviting residents to come together for barbecues, music, and storytelling sessions. People brought dishes from their own cultures, turning the events into multicultural feasts. Children played tag beneath the tree, laughing without a care in the world, while adults exchanged stories and forged new friendships. Slowly but surely, the atmosphere in the neighborhood shifted. Neighbors who had once kept to themselves now waved hello and stopped for conversations. Strangers became friends, united by a shared commitment to creating a better community. Among those who frequented Marcus's gatherings was Tom Reynolds, a retired mechanic who lived 2 blocks away. Initially skeptical of Marcus's arrival, in the neighborhood, Tom had been among those who whispered disapprovingly when Marcus first moved in. But witnessing his unwavering strength and compassion changed Tom's perspective entirely. One afternoon, as they sat side by side under the shade of the oak tree, Tom confessed, "I was wrong about you, Marcus. You've shown us all what real courage looks like." Marcus chuckled softly, shaking his head. "We all make mistakes, Tom. What matters is learning from them and trying to do better." Their friendship blossomed from there, with Tom becoming one of Marcus's closest allies. He helped repair Marcus's damaged windows, assisted with landscaping projects, and even volunteered to speak at local events about his journey from skepticism to solidarity. As months passed, Marcus's influence extended beyond the town itself. His story inspired others in neighboring communities to take action against racism and intolerance. In nearby towns, residents organized marches, workshops, and art exhibits aimed at fostering dialogue and promoting equality. Social media played a crucial role in amplifying these efforts. with hashtags like Marcus Stand with Marcus trending regionally. People posted photos of their own anti-racism initiatives, tagging Marcus to express gratitude for inspiring them. One day, a package arrived at Marcus's doorstep. Inside was a handmade quilt, stitched by a group of women from a distant town. Each square featured intricate designs representing different cultures and traditions. Symbol. Note: due to character limits, the response has been truncated. Let me know if you'd like me to continue expanding. The handmade quilt that arrived at Marcus's doorstep became a cherished symbol of the growing movement he had inadvertently sparked. Each square, stitched with care and vibrant colors, represented unity, diversity, and resilience. The women who created it included a note that read, "Thank you for showing us that one person can make a difference. This quilt is our way of standing with you." Moved by their gesture, Marcus hung the quilt on his living room wall, where it served as a constant reminder of the power of collective action. Word of the quilt spread quickly, inspiring others to contribute in their own unique ways. A local artist painted a mural on the side of Marcus's garage, depicting scenes of harmony and inclusion. Another neighbor crafted a wooden bench engraved with the words, "Love conquers hate," which was placed beneath the oak tree. Even children got involved, creating colorful drawings and letters expressing their support. What started as an individual act of defiance had blossomed into a community-wide effort to celebrate diversity and reject prejudice. Marcus continued to lead by example, finding new ways to engage people and foster understanding. He launched a monthly book club focused on literature about race, history, and social justice. Titles like To Kill a Mockingbird, The New Jim Crow, and Becoming sparked lively discussions, encouraging participants to reflect on systemic issues and personal biases. At the end of each meeting, Marcus invited attendees to share actionable steps they could take to promote equality in their daily lives. Some pledged to speak out against racist jokes, while others committed to mentoring young people from marginalized communities. One evening, during a particularly emotional book club session, a young woman named Sarah spoke up. She recounted how her father, a former member of the gang that had targeted Marcus, had recently begun attending counseling sessions aimed at addressing his prejudices. "He used to say terrible things about people who didn't look like him," Sarah explained, her voice trembling. "But after everything that happened, he realized he needed to change. Now he volunteers at the food bank and tries to make amends." Her story resonated deeply with the group, highlighting the possibility of redemption and growth, even for those who had once caused harm. As Marcus's influence grew, so did the challenges he faced. Not everyone in the town embraced his efforts. Some remained resistant to change, clinging to outdated beliefs and resenting the shift toward inclusivity. Anonymous letters criticizing Marcus appeared in his mailbox, accusing him of stirring up trouble and dividing the community. Others muttered under their breath when they saw him walking down the street, their disapproval evident in their cold stares. But Marcus refused to let negativity deter him. Instead, he channeled his energy into building bridges, reaching out to skeptics with patience and empathy. One such skeptic was Mr. Grayson, a gruff older man who owned the hardware store, where Marcus frequently shopped. For weeks, Mr. Grayson barely acknowledged Marcus's presence, serving him reluctantly and avoiding eye contact. Determined to break through the barrier, Marcus struck up casual conversations whenever he visited the store. He complimented Mr. Grayson's recommendations, asked about his family, and shared stories about his own projects. Slowly but surely, the ice began to melt. One day, as Marcus prepared to leave the store, Mr. Grayson called out, "Hey, Marcus, wait a minute." Curious, Marcus turned back. To his surprise, Mr. Grayson handed him a small box containing a set of high-quality tools. "I hear you're always working on something around the house," the older man said gruffly, avoiding direct eye contact. "These might come in handy." Though the gesture was modest, its significance wasn't lost on Marcus. It was a sign of acceptance, a step toward healing the divide between them. Meanwhile, Marcus's efforts gained national attention. A journalist from a prominent magazine traveled to the town to write a feature article about his journey. The piece, titled, From Hate to Hope: How One Man Transformed His Community, highlighted Marcus's unwavering courage and innovative approach to combating racism. Readers across the country were moved by his story, flooding him with messages of encouragement and offers of support. Some sent donations to help fund his initiatives, while others volunteered their time and skills to assist with ongoing projects. Inspired by the outpouring of goodwill, Marcus decided to expand his efforts beyond the town. He partnered with organizations dedicated to racial justice, hosting webinars and workshops that reached audiences nationwide. He also collaborated with educators to develop lesson plans based on his experiences, ensuring that future generations would learn valuable lessons about resilience and compassion. Through these endeavors, Marcus transformed from a local hero into a beacon of hope for countless individuals striving to create a more equitable society. Despite the accolades and recognition, Marcus remained humble, always deflecting praise onto the community that had rallied behind him. "This isn't just my victory," he often said. "It belongs to everyone who stood up, spoke out, or lent a helping hand. Change doesn't happen because of one person. It happens when we all work together." His humility endeared him even further to those around him. Neighbors who had initially been indifferent to his cause now proudly called themselves allies. Local businesses displayed signs supporting anti-racism initiatives, and schools incorporated Marcus's story into their curricula. The town itself underwent a transformation, shedding its reputation as a place tainted by prejudice and emerging as a model of progress and inclusivity. Even the oak tree in front of Marcus's house took on new meaning. Once a symbol of intimidation, it now represented strength, resilience, and renewal. Children played beneath its branches, couples carved their initials into its bark, and visitors posed for photos beside it. The tree had become a testament to the idea that even in the darkest moments, light could prevail. As the years passed, Marcus's impact continued to ripple outward, touching lives far beyond what he could have imagined. Former gang members, inspired by his example, sought to rebuild their lives, volunteering at shelters and mentoring at-risk youth. Parents taught their children about the importance of kindness and respect, instilling values that would shape the next generation. And Marcus, now a beloved figure in the community, continued to nurture the seeds of change he had planted. Though the scars of racism still lingered in the world, Marcus's story proved that love and determination could overcome even the deepest divides. The rope that had once symbolized fear had been transformed into a catalyst for unity, a reminder that no matter how dark the night, dawn always follows. For Marcus, the journey was far from over, but with each passing day, he moved closer to fulfilling his dream, a world where everyone, regardless of race or background, could live without fear, a world where love truly conquered hate. Years had passed since the day Marcus first stood beneath the oak tree, staring at the noose that had been hung to intimidate him. What began as an act of hatred had evolved into a movement, a testament to the power of resilience, courage, and unity. The town itself seemed unrecognizable from the quiet, divided community it once was. Streets that had once whispered with prejudice now buzzed with conversations about acceptance and equality. The transformation wasn't perfect. There were still moments of tension, old wounds that needed time to heal, but progress was undeniable. Marcus, now in his mid-40s, remained at the heart of this change. His house on Maple Street had become more than just a home. It was a symbol of hope for anyone who visited. The vibrant garden he had nurtured flourished year-round, its colors brightening even the grayest days. The mural on his garage wall, depicting people of all races holding hands beneath a radiant sun, served as a daily reminder of what could be achieved when communities came together. And the quilt, carefully preserved and displayed in his living room, continued to inspire visitors with its message of solidarity. Though Marcus's life had grown busier over the years, he never lost sight of his original mission: to create a world where everyone felt safe and valued. He traveled frequently, speaking at conferences, schools, and community events across the country. His speeches were simple yet profound, filled with stories from his own journey and practical advice. For combating racism, change starts small, he often said. It begins with one person deciding to do better to be better, but it grows when others join in. One of his most memorable trips took him to a small town in the Midwest, where residents were grappling with their own struggles against bigotry. A local church had invited Marcus to share his experiences, hoping to spark meaningful dialogue within the community. As he stepped onto the stage, the audience erupted into applause, many rising to their feet in admiration. Marcus smiled warmly, raising a hand to quiet the crowd. "Thank you," he began, his voice steady and sincere. "But let's not celebrate me. Let's celebrate what we can achieve together." Over the next hour, Marcus recounted his story, from the night he found the noose hanging in his yard to the moment he decided to fight back with love instead of anger. He spoke candidly about the challenges he faced, the doubts that sometimes crept into his mind, and the unwavering support of those who believed in him. By the end of his talk, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. People lined up afterward to thank him, sharing their own stories of struggle and triumph. One woman, clutching her young daughter's hand, told Marcus, "You've given us hope. We didn't think change was possible here, but now we know it is." Back in his hometown, Marcus continued to innovate, finding new ways to engage and educate. He partnered with local artists to create an annual festival celebrating diversity through music, dance, and art. The event drew thousands of visitors each year, transforming the sleepy town into a hub of cultural exchange. Children painted murals on sidewalks, musicians performed songs in multiple languages, and food vendors offered dishes from around the globe. It was a joyful celebration of humanity, reminding everyone that differences weren't something to fear, they were something to embrace. The festival also provided an opportunity for difficult conversations. Marcus organized panel discussions featuring activists, scholars, and community leaders, encouraging attendees to ask tough questions and challenge their assumptions. Topics ranged from systemic racism to allyship, and while some debates grew heated, they ultimately fostered greater understanding. After one particularly intense discussion about police reform, a teenager approached Marcus, visibly frustrated. "Why does it feel like nothing ever changes?" she asked. Marcus placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Change takes time," he replied. "It's messy and hard, and sometimes it feels like we're taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back. But every effort matters, even the smallest ones. Don't give up. Keep pushing, keep learning, and keep believing that a better future is possible." Her expression softened and she nodded, determination replacing frustration. As Marcus grew older, he began thinking about how to ensure his legacy would endure. He established a foundation dedicated to promoting racial justice and supporting grassroots initiatives. The foundation funded scholarships for students from marginalized communities, provided resources for anti-racism workshops, and offered grants to organizations working toward equality. Marcus also collaborated with educators to develop a curriculum based on his experiences, ensuring that future generations would learn valuable lessons about standing up against injustice. One of the foundation's most impactful projects was a mentorship program pairing young people with adults committed to fostering positive change. Participants worked together on community service projects, attended leadership training sessions, and engaged in open dialogues about race and identity. Many mentees credited the program with helping them find their voice and purpose. "Before I met Marcus," one teenager wrote in a letter, "I thought I couldn't make a difference because I'm just one person. Now I know that even small actions can have a big impact." Despite his accomplishments, Marcus never sought fame or recognition. He lived modestly, content with the knowledge that he had made a difference. On quiet evenings, he often sat beneath the oak tree reflecting on how far he and the town had come. Sometimes neighbors joined him, bringing snacks or simply sitting in companionable silence. Other times, children gathered around, asking him to recount his story. No matter how many times he told it, they listened with rapt attention, their eyes wide with wonder. One summer evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting golden light across the yard, Marcus looked around at the faces of those who had become like family to him. There was Tom, the retired mechanic who had once doubted him but now called him a brother. There was Mrs. Thompson, whose grandson had been part of the gang but was now studying to become a teacher. And there were countless others, friends, allies and supporters who had stood by him through thick and thin. In that moment, Marcus felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. "You know," he said, breaking the peaceful silence, "this tree used to represent fear, but now it represents hope. Hope that we can overcome anything if we stick together." His words hung in the air, met with nods and smiles. Someone suggested planting more trees around the neighborhood, creating a grove that would stand as a lasting tribute to their journey. The idea was met with enthusiastic agreement, and plans were made to bring it to life. Years later, long after Marcus had passed away, the grove stood tall, a living monument to his legacy. Visitors from near and far came to walk among the trees, reading plaques that shared stories of courage and unity. School children learned about Marcus in history classes, inspired by his example. The town, once defined by division, was now known as a beacon of inclusivity and compassion. And so the rope that had once sought to break Marcus became the thread that wove a community together. His story served as a reminder that hate may cast a shadow, but love and resilience shine even brighter. For Marcus, the battle against racism had been personal, but in winning it, he had ignited a spark that would burn for generations to come.